Stephen Squibbs presents this month's board certification tip.
And our next guest for our board cert review seminar hails from Fort Walton Beach. Ladies and gentlemen, with us now, newly board certified attorney, Michael Goodson. Michael, are you with us?
I'm with you, Eddie. Thank you.
Congratulations on passing this career epic moment defining issue and being one of the 9 that are now board certified as of 2023.
Well, thanks, Eddie.
So you've been practicing, what, about 10 years?
I got my license to practice in 2014. My first 2 years was an assistant state attorney in Panama City. Then in 2016, I started doing family law full-time and have been doing family law full-time since then. So about 7 years of just family law.
And what made you decide to go board cert track?
As a full-time family law attorney, I got to know a couple of other board certified attorneys in our area, as well as attending the review course and the AAML Institute. And to be honest, I just saw that as kind of a necessary step in my career to become board certified. The first time I took the exam was in 2020, which I think would have been the first year I was eligible to take it. Did not pass at that time and told myself, hey, I'm just going to keep trying until I do it. Because of COVID and everything that was going on, I did not take it that next year. So I've only taken it twice, one in 2020 and then one in 2023 when I passed. But yeah, I mean, to me, it was just something that when I made the decision to be a family law attorney and knew that there was this credential out there to say that I was, a specialist and had some level of expertise in that area, to me, it was just kind of a no-brainer to try for it. And as somebody that's at the, I hope, beginning end of my career rather than towards the tail end, I saw that as being something that was helpful for me as a younger attorney with prospective clients, as well as with other attorneys and judges that, yeah, man, there's no downside to doing it other than the involvement and investment of preparing for the exam, taking the exam, going through the process of having to do all of the case histories and fill out the application and get recommendations. But yeah, to me, it was just a necessary step.
Yeah, I think that's a very healthy way of looking at it, because most people don't pass their first time, and having that expectation is kind of creating this negative aura about the test. And after you took the test in 20, did you do anything to see why you didn't pass? Did you look at the results?
Yeah, I did. So when I took it in 20, COVID was just starting. So the exam was March of 20 and COVID hadn't really come to our area. I remember at the exam, there was one person wearing a mask and I thought, boy, that's weird. Why is this person wearing a mask?
How things change. So that was probably the last year they had it.
Yeah,
it wasn't remote.
So then the review process that year was by Zoom, where they let me look at, I think, my exam answers as well as the grading and score sheet. So if an essay, I think, is on a 1 to 6 scale, hey, on this essay, I got a 2. And I could look at my answer. I don't remember if they gave a model answer at that point because it's been 3 years. For the multiple choice, it was, hey, here are the 20 or 25 questions, and here's how many you got right, here's how many you got wrong. And then same with the short answer, here's where you got points, here's where you didn't. So it was helpful for me to at least see what my score was and then what I needed to do to get it to a passing score. And where that was helpful for me is I knew how much time I had put into studying for 2020, which was nowhere near the amount of time that I put in for 2023. And part of that was not that I intentionally understudied, but I knew it was the first year that I could take it. I'd been practicing for less than 5 years in family law. I really had no expectation of passing it. Not to say I didn't care, but I knew I could take it again. And I had my whole career ahead of me. So I went into it with very low expectations and very low pressure on myself. And I got to see, hey, I didn't do as bad as I thought. I was, a puncher's chance away or a couple questions here or there from getting close to a passing score. So then when I was preparing for 2023's exam, I had left my prior firm in September, October of 22, came over to a new firm, brought very few cases with me. So I had time on my hands. And I talked with my wife and made the very conscious decision of, hey, while things are slow and I'm kind of getting up to speed at my new firm, all of my free time, I'm just going to devote to studying. So I took the red books that come out every year from the review course. I got them in PDF. I put them on my iPhone. And if I had 5 or 15 minutes, I would just read. I made the plan of at least 30 minutes a day. However, I divided it up to do 30 minutes a day of studying. Sometimes I was able to do that in a 30-minute chunk. Sometimes I'd keep going and do 45, 60, 90 if I was just in a good mood and something was interesting and I had the time and kept doing it. Other times there are topics that are just really dry and it's a slog to kind of get through. So I would break those up or do a little bit of studying at home, walk the dog, play with my kid, do dishes, do some other chores. And so by the time the exam got here in March, I was able to read through all of the prior year's books. So let's say I took it in 23, so I studied 22's materials. 23's stuff comes out in January for the exam in March. And I did not get through all of the red books from January's course, with there only being about a month and a half. I did the best that I could, and I focused on some areas that I wasn't as familiar with. But I found that just by doing the prior year's review and then attending the course every year and reading Florida Law Weekly when it comes out, that prepared me enough for the exam.
Any other materials besides Florida Law Weekly and the red books that in the statutes that you looked at?
Honestly, no. I know some people have reviewed, I think it's the Abrams material that's in a gray bound. Everybody should know what I'm talking about there. I've looked at that from time to time, but I did not study it. I really just focused on the review books, Florida Law Weekly, because I get the weekly emails, and I got your squibs as well. So those are helpful. And then reading through, chapter 61 and paternity and domestic violence and chapter 751, reading through the statutes that would be covered. When I studied in 2020, I focused first on the statutes. I read through all of those and then didn't do as much of the red books. This time I kind of flipped it, that I focused more on the red books and did not read all of 61 cover to cover. I think I went through like the parenting factors, alimony, equitable distribution, kind of the big stuff, but didn't really get lost in the weeds on it. Same thing with Rule 12, the rules of family law procedure. I selectively read through that, but I didn't read through it cover to cover because to me, the relevant stuff was contained within the red books. And I just remember taking the exam, just feeling kind of fortunate. There were some questions on the exam where I had cases that were very similar to some of the questions. So I kind of researched those issues ahead of time. So I felt pretty comfortable on it. But yeah, I remember hearing people talk about studying and making flashcards or doing outlines. Even in law school, that was never my way of studying. I was just hey, let's read the materials. Let's think about it. Let's digest it. Let's try to mull it over in my mind, talk about it with other attorneys, make sure that I fully grasp it. But flashcards never worked for me. Outlining over and over again is just, for me, it's really boring. I know for some people it's really effective for them. But yeah, man, I think that the red books that come out every year is really kind of the go-to source. The AAML does a pretty good job of preparing those, and those tend to track with what's on the exam.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of those statements. And I think you could probably just get by with the red books. That's why they have them there. And everybody has a different learning style. There's no like right way to do it. It's just what works for you. And the cool thing of interviewing everybody who's passed is you hear everybody's technique and style, and it's such a diverse, our minds work so differently. Like I need the visual, I need to write it down for it to get stuck in my head. But it probably takes me longer to learn things than most people. So that's why I do it.
And
Any chance you
I
go ahead, Michael?
remember from this interview that you did with the last year's folks, seeing, like you just said, different people's learning styles, as well as the review course on Wednesday night of that week. The people that are taking the exam can go to kind of an interview session with the people that passed it for the last year. And I did that when I took it in 2020, and I did that again in 2023. So in addition to this interview, I'd strongly recommend anybody that's going to take the exam to go to that Wednesday night. I think they call it Tips and Nibbles, if I remember right.
Yep.
But again, it's a panel discussion with, I think, everybody that had passed, and you hear about their different studying styles. And I remember some of those people talking about how they studied made me feel a little insecure and nervous of, God, I haven't put in 300 or 500 hours into this. I don't know how people find the time, and kudos to those that do. But then I did hear some people that had passed, I think from your interview, of, yeah, I read the red books and I kind of looked at the statutes, and then I practice this every day. So I'm always researching it, and that's how I studied. And that tended to work more for me. So yeah, you're absolutely right, man. Everybody approaches it differently. Everyone learns differently. And what works for me might not work for other people.
But it's good to hear that, because it validates you if you're not an outliner or a flashcarder. And
Yeah.
You don't have to do it a particular way. You have to do it in the way that works for you.
Absolutely.
Do you know how many hours you spent in 23 studying, or for the 23 exam?
I really don't know. I didn't keep track of them. I remember, like I said, hearing those people say I did 100, 200, 300, 500, just to me, some crazy number of hours. For me, I try to approach it more as a day-to-day thing, because I find for me, if I have a big project or a big task, seeing it all at once kind of overwhelms me. So if I can break it down into its little component parts and just knock out one thing at a time, that's easier for me. So for me, instead of thinking about, hey, I want to study 150 hours before this exam, I said, hey, I want to do 30 minutes a day. And if I can do 30 minutes a day, I don't know what that adds up to. I'm sure you can figure it out, but said, hey, look, I've only got so many days between now and March, mid-March, whenever the exam date was. I can find 30 minutes throughout the day. And I told myself it doesn't have to be 30 straight minutes. If I have 5 minutes here or 10 minutes here or 15 minutes there, as long as by the end of the day I've hit my 30, cool, I've checked that box, I can congratulate myself. And then if I decide to go over it, awesome, that's just gravy.
Bonus points.
Yeah, it was bonus points. And to me, on my phone, I think it was the Books app that comes with Apple. It'll track how much time you have that app open. So I could look and go, okay, I've done 19 minutes so far. I've got another 11 I need to find. And I made it, it's kind of silly, but I made it like a little bit of a game. Like, hey, I don't get to, go work out yet, or I don't get to eat a bowl of ice cream or watch whatever dumb TV show. Like, hey, I've got to complete this task. Then, I get my carrot, I get my little nibble or whatever it was to get my little dopamine rush out of it to make it rewarding. Because I don't.
That's a cool way to make yourself accountable.
Oh yeah, for me it works. I don't like studying any more than I like folding laundry or doing the dishes or doing the stuff that we all have to do just as part of day-to-day life. So if I could find a way to trick my brain into making it fun, which really isn't the right word, but the best I can come up with, that helped me.
I remember learning evidence in law school with a video game called Objection, and so that made learning all these hearsay exceptions fun.
That would be a good one.
So can you articulate what you did, how you approached the 23 test differently than you did in 2020?
Yeah, in 2020, my approach was, hey, let's see what the exam's like. Let's study a little bit, but dude, if you don't pass, man, it's no big deal. So I went into it with low expectations of myself, not to say thinking I would fail, but just, man, statistically, I think the average is around 20% or so in any given.
Sometimes less.
Yeah. So I was like, look, I know I've got the odds stacked against me. I had learned that enough people pass their second or third or whatever time, and they go on to be board certified and have great careers. So that didn't bother me. I've known judges that failed the bar exam 1, 2, 3 times and then became judges. So I was like, okay, look, if I fail this, no big deal. So I didn't over prepare for it. I under prepared. And again, it wasn't deliberate. I was just kind of new, still figuring things out, had only been doing family law at that point for 3 to 4 years. So still very green and new at it. And just, kind of approached it like getting in the shallow end of the pool. In 2023, I approached it of, okay, I'm going to study to pass this exam. I want to pass it. My goal is to pass it. I'm not going to beat myself up if I don't, but I don't want to have to take it again. So I'm going to prepare as much as I can. And I was fortunate because back in 2020, I was with a firm and kind of in the middle of things and running a full-time practice. In 2023, I had switched firms and was kind of starting over or starting in a new firm and building from the ground up. So I had a pretty low case volume in late 2022. And I noticed that things tend to be a little bit slower around the holidays in many ways anyway. So I had time on my hands and I've made use of it of, hey, if I've got a free minute, I'm going to study. I even told my paralegal, hey, if you walk by my office and I'm staring at my phone, please don't judge me as I'm asking you to do things for me because I'm not just goofing off, I'm studying. Look, I promise. And then kind of the same thing to my wife of, hey, if we're going to go visit family this weekend, would you mind driving so that I can study in the car and just, read the phone? So that was my approach is I guess I just took it more seriously in 2023 and that, hey, my goal is to pass this. I'm going to do what I can do to pass it.
And it's amazing when you articulate a goal, you manifest it. So
absolutely. Oh, absolutely.
I dig it.
Yeah.
So you've seen the test as someone who didn't pass, as someone who got to see the answers, now someone who took it again and passed. So you're probably in a real good position to answer this next question as to, because this test gets such a horrible rap and so many negative things are said about it that it is not fair. From your perspective, do you think that this is a fair test?
Yes, I do. I remember in 2020, there were a lot of questions on there about annulments, multiple questions about annulments. And I took the exam with other people that I regularly practice with. So after the exam, it was, hey, what the hell were all the questions about annulments? Have you guys ever even done an annulment? I think I had done one at that point, and I think I've still only ever done one annulment. So at that point, back in 2020, I felt, hey, I don't know how fair this is, or boy, it seems like all the same, not the same people keep passing, but hey, the people that speak at the AAML Institute and the review course, their associates and partners, those are the ones that were passing. So it was probably just a lot of sour grapes and, hey, I didn't pass it and trying to make excuses of thinking it wasn't fair. But then in 2023, there were questions on there and I was like, yeah, that's a good question. I think I know the answer to it. And I knew enough of them to pass. But yeah, I it's interesting. The more I prepared, the more fair of an exam I thought it was. And I think that's probably the best answer, is that on the 2023 exam, I don't remember a single question that I thought was, like, what is this? What are you talking about? I remember a question in 2020 about jury challenges. And at that point thinking, well, we don't have juries, we do for paternity, but when's the last time there was a jury trial in any sort of family law case?
You get to hold the baby up in front of the jury and say, it's his.
Yeah. I made a joke with one of the other test takers that, hey, before we retire, let's promise that we will do one jury trial and do that just to say that we did. I think that bet is still out there. But
Michael, we need to get a paternity trial case against each other.
Oh, buddy, I'm game to do it.
Demand that jury trial.
I think that'd be a hoot. But yeah, I really do. I do think it is a fair exam. And look, the more you study for it, the more fair it becomes because the more prepared you are. The only unfairness that I felt was because I didn't know the answer to something. But if I knew the answer, well, obviously it feels fair.
Cool. Is there any advice that we haven't talked about that you would want someone taking the test to hear?
I don't know that there's anything we haven't talked about, but just to circle back to study the way that works for you. Don't feel like you have to study the way that other people that pass the exam study. I remember being back in law school, there's the group of kids that sit in the front of every single class and raise their hand for every single question, whether they know the answer or not. I was not one of those people. Some of them went on to do really well in their careers, and some didn't or didn't even go into being practicing attorneys. I remember listening to people through your interview as well as the review course panel, and their study methods are totally different from the way that I approached it. And it worked for both of us. So I would just say that anybody that's taking the exam, take it seriously, but give yourself a little bit of credit that you made it through college, you made it through law school. Not a whole lot of people do that. You made it through the application process, which is not fun to have to fill that thing out. And if you do this every day, you do this every day. And what I found now that I've been board certified for, I guess, a month now, none of us know everything. It's okay to not know things. We get to look stuff up. That's the benefit of doing what we do. It's very rare that we don't have the ability to research something. So, approach the exam the way that you feel comfortable doing it, and do it in a way that you'll actually do it. If you're a flashcard person and you need to do flashcards, do flashcards. Just reading it and not doing flashcards isn't going to work for you. If you're somebody that doesn't like doing flashcards or has never done it, don't do that. Do what's gotten you this far in life. It's an exam like any other. The LSAT sucked. The bar exam sucked. But all of us sitting here today listening to this got through the LSAT and got through the bar exam and were licensed attorneys. So, you're all capable of getting through it. It's just a matter of putting in the time. And if you don't pass it, try again.
Good words, Michael. Very wise. We appreciate the time you've given us, and congratulations on being awesome.
Well, thanks, Eddie. I appreciate that. It's good to meet you.
Good to meet you too. And I look forward to our paternity case.
Wonderful. Can't wait.
Ladies and gentlemen, Michael Goodson.
That brings us to the conclusion of this quarter's episode of Stevens & Stevens Family Law CLE. Remember, all proceeds from this project benefit the Center for Child Counseling. We truly appreciate your support. We will see you next quarter. Till then, do something that matters.